I'm like, oh, has this already happened?
Hi, everyone. We're going to welcome to the Massachusetts Pollinator Network Monthly meeting. We are going to get started in just a moment. I'm going to let folks just roll in for another minute before we get started. But I'm so happy everyone is here.
Good turnout.
Yeah. All right. Make sure my notes are there. Okay. All right. Well, it's just after 7. I think some folks are probably going to continue to roll in, but that's fine. Welcome. It's our somehow our September meeting. I don't know how all of September already happened. That doesn't seem quite right. But here we are at the end of September. For anyone on the call who doesn't know me, my name is Rosemary Malfi. I'm the Pollinator Network Coordinator, and I'm really glad everyone is here today. I think we have probably a reasonable enough number of folks that we could go through very kind of like brief introductions where you just give your name, where you're calling in from, and if you have a group affiliation, feel free to state what it is. So we're gonna introduce the Mystic Charles folks shortly. So I'm gonna skip you for right now, and I think I see Jane Wynn. And I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name.
At least mine's easy. I'm Jane Wynn with Berkshire Environmental Action Team out in the Berkshires, and we just are purchasing our property and have planted a rain/pollinator garden and had dozens of monarchs emerge and feed to head south to Mexico.
Awesome, that's great. Heidi?
I'm calling from Belchertown in Western Mass, and I guess my only official affiliation is with the Massachusetts Pollinator Network, where I volunteer, and I also volunteer at Wing and a Prayer Nursery in Cummington.
Charlie?
I'm from Lexington and with Lexington Living Landscapes, which is a local initiative working on native plants, trees, no chemicals, etc.
Excellent. Ginny Albertson. And then the next person after that, if you want to get ready to unmute yourself, will be Jean Wildman. Oh, you're still muted, Ginny.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Ginny Albertson. I'm with the Lunenburg Community Pollinator Habitat.
Yay!
In Lunenburg.
Wonderful. Ruben, do you know Ruben?
Thank you.
Yes, Ruben has
do.
been talking about your project. That's great.
He's been wonderful. He's been absolutely wonderful. Yep.
Awesome. Jean?
Hi, I'm Jean Wildman from Arlington. My only affiliation of project is my own yard, where I've been trying to grow native things for the past 7 years or so. I don't work in the environmental field right now, but I worked for the Commonwealth in watershed division of an agency for a few years. So, but not at this time.
That's great. That's really great. Carol.
Hi, I'm Carol Horowitz. I live in Florence, part of Northampton, and I am a member of Climate Action Now's Farming, Forest, and Food Systems Working Group, and also on the NOFA Mass Policy Committee.
And then I have Kate, and then next will be Holly.
Hi, I'm Kate McDonough, and I live in Conway, Massachusetts, and I'm the former nursery manager for Native Plant Trust's Masami Farm. And during my time there, we introduced pollinator kits for sale, and which were widely and continue to be widely popular. And at this point now, I'm just doing some consulting for them, primarily collecting seed for propagation.
That's an important task and topic. Holly. Oh, you're muted, Holly.
Sorry, my name is Holly Wheeler and I live in Northampton, Mass. I'm a member of the Mass Pollinator Network and as well of the Native Plant Trust and Xerces, Society for Invertebrate Protection.
That's a lot of things.
Not any more than other people.
Thank you, Holly. And then I have Alice, and then Leah will be after that. Oh,
I'm Alice, but you can't see me. I'm on me. I'm from North Adams. I'm a member of a local garden club. We help work on community gardens with Mass Mocha. So it's a lot of fun, and I'm really eager to meet Jane Wynn. Thank you.
thank you. Leah, and then Wendy will be next.
Hi, sorry I don't have the video on, but yeah, I'm just excited to get involved. I'm not currently officially in any groups, so I'm just excited to volunteer and learn more.
Excellent, thank you. Wendy, and then Vivian.
I think she's muted.
Yep.
Wendy's muted.
You're still muted, Wendy. Okay. Well, oh,
There she goes.
Yeah. Hi, Wendy.
Hi. I live in Pelham, and I'm a master gardener and a friend of Heidi Dodd. Hi, Heidi.
Hi, Wendy.
And I'm trying to grow more pollinating plants in my garden for the pollinators.
Wonderful. Thank you. Vivian, and then Dorothy.
I'm just going to do audio. I'm chair of the Great Barrington Agricultural Commission, and we developed the Great Barrington Pollinator Action Plan back in 2018 that has inspired some other communities in Massachusetts. And I also help coordinate Operation Pollination for the Upper Housatonic Valley National Heritage Area, which covers about 16 towns in Massachusetts and about 10 in Connecticut.
Great. Dorothy, and then Maria will be after that.
Hi, I'm Dorothy. I live in Florence, which is part of Northampton. Sorry.
If everyone else wants to mute themselves, sometimes there's feedback there. Okay, sorry, Dorothy. Oh. I'm not sure what happened to Dorothy. We can come back. Okay, but Dorothy's on here twice. All right, so Erin, and then Greta.
Hi, I'm Erin. I work for Mass Audubon. I am not here officially as an affiliate, like representing Mass Audubon, but this is a personal passion of mine. Like many others, I have a native pollinator garden that I've been working on at my house for the last 2.5 years, but I'm involved with a lot of groups and like Native Plant Trust and Grow Native and all kinds of things. And I volunteer at the Somerville Community Growing Center, which is where I first heard Nick Dorian speak about native bees. And that is like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And that is the event that set me off learning all I can about pollinators and native pollinators and how to help them.
Thank you. I can understand why Nick is a great speaker. It's great. Okay, Greta, and then I think it's Kara or Kara.
So I live in Lexington and I'm active in the garden club. I'm part of the civic gardening group. We take care of traffic islands and gardens at historical sites in Lexington. And I'm also affiliated with Lexington Living Landscapes. Thank you.
Then we have Kara and Betty, and then Suzanne, and then we're gonna move on in our agenda.
Hey, I'm Kara. I live in Sunderland. I'm just kind of like a community member, not really involved with anything yet. I'm a horticultural science grad from UMass recently. And yeah, just looking to get involved, seeing what's up in the area.
Excellent. Thank you. And I think it's Betty, and then Suzanne.
Betty said she has no audio.
She has no, she has no audio. Okay. Sorry, Betty. Suzanne?
Hi, I'm Suzanne Brothers from Braintree. Help to run the community garden there. And we have a meeting coming up later in October with the town councilor. First step's trying to figure out how to get some bigger projects going on in the town.
Awesome. That's great. Did I miss anyone?
Yes,
Yeah.
Maria.
So sorry, you shuffled in my screen.
Maria Bartlett, Andover. Garden Club Federation of Massachusetts. I'm the environmental awareness chair, and I got them to weigh in on the neonicotinoid issue, which helped eliminate those starting in June. Andover Garden Club and also the Andover Green Advisory Board. And I was somewhat distressed last night at the NOFA program with Evan Abramson to find out that if I work really hard in my yard and make it pollinator friendly and native plants, that I will just be inviting pollinators there to my yard to get killed by drift and pesticides and everything from neighboring yards if they're not on board. So I'm sort of discouraged, but you know, I don't know where to go with this, but you know, except convert my whole neighborhood, I guess.
That's going to be a good segue into tonight's topic, which is pollinator pathways. Thank you everyone for sharing. I think I got everybody. If I didn't, feel free to drop your information into the chat. Yeah, so
Anne can.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. The people keep shuffling on the screen. Anne, are you there? Here you are, Anne.
I'm sorry, I was a little bit late. I live in Amherst, and we take care of an arboretum, which is a town conservation land, and we have 2 small pollinator gardens there because we're really trying to educate visitors about the importance of them. And I also am interested in trying to move towards more organic lawn care in the place that I live because they use pesticides and so forth. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, did I miss anyone else? Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for being here. I always enjoy hearing what everyone is working on. I'm always amazed at the number of different things that people are involved with. It's incredible. But yes, that last comment about what to do and your neighborhood is a very good segue into introducing our guest speakers tonight, which is the members of the Mystic Charles Pollinator Pathway Group. That group is described as a volunteer coalition of gardeners and native plant enthusiasts that have come together to promote and create more pollinator habitats in the Mystic and Metro West Charles River watersheds region in Massachusetts. And I'll drop, if you don't know it already, I'll drop a link to their Facebook group into the chat momentarily. Our speakers will include Brucey Moulton, co-chair of Sustainable Arlington, who's a gardener with a passion for observing, and a member of Mass Audubon for over 40 years. Jean Devine is an environmental educator and native plant coach who guides youth and adults through the maze that is native plant selection, design, and installation, and her work takes her through the Mystic Charles Pollinator Path Group communities. Kim DeAndrade is a native plant advocate, gardener, and nature journaler from Medford. And Sarah Wong is an avid gardener from Belmont. And I've been to the Mystic Charles group a couple of times and plan to continue going to that group. It's just very warm and welcoming, and I encourage folks to check it out. And I turn it over to you.
I think we're getting our slides up.
The last thing I was going to say while you're doing that too is the Mystic Charles group is also just if you're thinking about ways to kind of move beyond your own yard for helping pollinators. This is a really great example of a way that folks can do that and come together. And I hope it's something that's replicated across many communities in the state.
So can you see?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Well, we are the Mystic Charles Pollinator Pathways group, and tonight we're talking about how to. We didn't know that we were going to start this group back in June of 2020. It just sort of happened. First, I'm going to say a little bit about who we are. We're part of a movement with momentum. Your inboxes are probably full of messages from every environmental group that you are connected with saying, oh, the bees are in trouble, the monarchs are in trouble, biodiversity is tanking, help, help, help. And that's all true. But there's also a great deal of pleasure to be found in a garden and hope and excitement in coming together to try to make a difference in our part of the world for native plants and native pollinators. At this point, in the 16 months since we first met up, we have become volunteers committed to expanding native pollinator habitats within our region. We are gardeners, educators, specialists, members of sustainable town planning groups, garden clubs, and more. We draw participants from Arlington, Belmont, Cambridge, Lexington, Medford, Newton, Somerville, Watertown, Waltham, Winchester, and occasionally further afield. May I have the next slide, please? Great. And now for a little preamble. How did we really get started? We were all gardeners already. We had habits of observation and looking around us and noticing things that were happening in our garden and other gardens. And we're all acting, as I said before, existing in this situation where there's constant talk about pollinators at risk. Well, back in January of 2020, for my thread of how I got to the Mystic Charles Pollinator Pathways group, as co-chair of Sustainable Arlington, another Arlington resident came to me and said, well, gee, there's this park across the street from me, and it's really big, and it would be fabulous if we could have a no-mow strip, and I know just the place for it. So we got together, and I went and looked at her lovely garden, and we walked in the park across the street, and we looked at where she thought would make a terrific no-mow strip where we could encourage native plants. We hopped in the car and we drove around and looked at a bunch of other potential locations in Arlington and wound up in my garden, even though it was January or February, and talked about what was there. And I kept thinking, how are we going to make, and I talked to some people in town who were in a position to possibly make a difference about this idea. And we started to pull together some information, and then COVID hit. Kept thinking about it. Well, another thread. So that's the first question. That's the question from this engaged and thoughtful gardener and resident in a community. The second part of this is a performance. Sustainable Arlington has often collaborated with a local improv theater playback troupe called True Story Theater. They've been around for over 20 years, and they are an incredible troupe who will take a particular topic and develop a program around it that engages all of the audience that wants to engage. You can also just sit back and watch and listen, and gets people to tell stories that are related to that topic. And in our case, it was pollinator protectors. And what do pollinators mean to you? Are you doing something right now in your own life, in your garden, to support them, etc.? And it was this was on May 16th of last year. It was a great program. We had a good turnout. We had lots of thoughtful input, but I still didn't know what my next step was going to be. But I know since the Sustainable Belmont chair, and I'm on the list for events at Sustainable Belmont. And lo and behold, in June, there was a presentation by Jean Devine, who was talking about her native plant installation work. And I went to that, and a number of other people on this call were there. And in the course of that meeting, when it got to be question and answer time, I said, well, you know, once upon a time in Arlington, we had an energy smackdown. This was like 15 years ago, where which was partly to get people to think about how do you make your own homes more energy efficient, how could, you know, and it was a multi-town thing. 3 communities competed. Maybe we could do something like that with pollinator protection and gardening. Well, that idea sort of floated around. We shared information, and after that meeting in June of last year, we began meeting informally. And now here we are 16 months later, and we've got an organization that's moving along. And I'm going to turn this over to the next member of our group who will be talking with you.
So how did we get started? Several people, I was not among them, met up at a talk about biodiversity restoration through planting of native plants. Timing was perfect. There were representatives from different town organizations present who were looking for ways to organize their town groups and the people in their communities around the importance of planting for pollinators and native plants as a way to address biodiversity loss and climate change. And everyone was homebound and using Zoom. So people were going to meetings. This is when I got started. There was a kickoff meeting, and notices were put by word of mouth and on listservs. I heard about it from the Arlington Gardeners listserv. And then we had consistent monthly Zoom meetings to try to put together our ideas and figure out what do we want to do. We researched other pollinator groups. We made a big spreadsheet and looked into groups in Connecticut and Western Mass. We found out about the Western Mass group and the germ of the idea to form the statewide group. And we tried to decide, did we want to be a separate group? Or do we want to be a chapter of a larger group? We brainstormed names. All these things took a while, and were very organic. Mystic Charles, there were people from both the Mystic River watershed and the Charles River watershed. So next slide. Not sure who's on activities.
Is this you, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute. Okay, this is just a guide to the rest of the talk. So I'm going to be talking about sharing info and resources. the map and the survey and the sign. And then Jean will wrap up with the Zoom meetings, presentations, and what's in our future. Lucky Jean. So of course, we're trying to get together to share our information and resources. And so one of the first things we did was set up a Google group. And we also set up a Google Drive with an email so that we could try to share information on there. That technically we have a public part of the drive where people can go and look for resources. But we found that people don't really go there. And we have a hard time. I mean, it's just a lot to do, a lot of administrative organizing there. And what we also did was set up a Facebook page and group. And so, the discussion, which is probably you guys familiar with, I'm trying to get my cursor there. Can you see the cursor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Facebook groups, the discussion is where you can share your pictures and talk about your problems and discuss the latest news, right? So, but what I found also to be useful is we started setting up guides, and guides, like for instance, in this guide, we have what to buy, and you can see it's actually what to plant. So you can see some of the links that we have here. There's a curb strip plant list, dried shade suggestions. Whenever anybody posts any link or information that we feel like is something worth keeping, instead of trying to scroll through endlessly for something you read once, we try to organize it here. And of course, where to buy. Then over here under topics, there are a lot of topics. Let's see, can I see? Hold on. So here are some of the lists of things we have under topics where people are discussing invasives, seasonal practices. That includes stem cutting or leaving the leaves, these kinds of things, the whole debate about cultivars. So I think what the Facebook group did for us, though, is we had an immediate online identity, like we were a real group because we were a Facebook group. And we have 222 members now. So I'm going to talk about the other major thing we did at the beginning, starting at the beginning, was we decided we wanted to map existing native plant gardens in our region. And so we wanted to see where we're starting, but we also wanted to get people thinking about it. So we developed 2 surveys, one for public green spaces and one for residential yards. And they work both as a data collection device and an educational tool. So I'm going to talk about the home garden survey for a moment. Primarily, it has plant lists that you check off for the plants that you have. The plants that you have in your yard. So we spent a lot of time forming these plant lists. We had several criteria. One was what we felt was commonly found in our area. Like they were not going to be rare or unheard of. And then we emphasized the number of pollinator species supported. So next to each plant name will be a number if that is supported, if that supports pollinator species. And this is according to the National Wildlife Federation plant list database. We gave priorities to trees. So we only ask that you have 6 species because we really wanted to encourage people to get on the map and start thinking about putting more in. And so we have trees counting double. And then we organized our plant list like the Wild Seed Project, which goes by seasons. So when you're checking off your plants, you can see very quickly for yourself if you have a hole, if you're missing spring blooming, for example. We have, and then we tried to encourage some of Dr. Jagir's plants for at-risk bees, especially where they were duplicated by, for example, as a keystone species under Talamy. So then we had a list of invasives that you could check off, and we tried to include plants that maybe people weren't aware are invasive. So some of those examples are honeysuckle, multiflora rose, or burning bush. Then we had a checklist for what are you doing to encourage pollinator habitat in your garden. So we have a long list of things like, do you mow your lawn less often? Are you trying to get rid of your lawn? Are you leaving the leaves? Do you know how to cut the stems for bee nests? Are you trying to cut down on nighttime lighting? So these are the kinds of things that we try to educate as we, at the same time that we're encouraging and collecting data on who really has what. Okay, so I am going to go to the map now. So this is our map, and it's got about 110 entries, and it's mainly inside 128, although you can see there's one in Bedford, one in Natick, there's Natick, and then way down here, one in Medfield. So those are the outliers, but mostly it's within the 128. I'm gonna do this. So we have two broad categories of entries. One are public and the other one is residential. So the public ones are denoted by these trees. And the main thing that we ask on that public space, green space survey is, can you verify that that this is a pesticide? This place does not use pesticides. And if they cannot verify, we put a brown tree in, and green trees are for places where they can verify. So Winchester Right Lock Farm, for example. Then there are smaller public areas which are gardens, actual gardens denoted by the green flower. Then we have your basic entry level gardens just starting out. So this entry is for people who want to be on the list, on the map, but they're not quite sure that they qualify. In fact, most people who who get on the list have way more than 6 species. So it's not that big an issue. But the other issue that people have had is with privacy. So I'm just going to click on this entry right here, and you can see that you don't have to say anything about where you live and what you have. You can just be on the map. But I have to say, people actually do want to share, though. They want to, hold on. They want to tell you all about their garden. So for example, this, you can put photos on, and so it's sort of like we can do this armchair tour. You can click on all of the entries. I'll just go back for a moment, with stars on them, which means that there are photographs there. So you can go look at the photographs and get inspired. And I'm just going to show you this. Whoops, wrong one. This entry, because I think they do several different things. They give you a little narrative about what they're doing, right? And I'm going to read it. It says, I've been working to create pollinator and bird habitat in my garden. I still have a long way to go, but it makes me feel like I'm doing some good for the environment and for all the wild creatures with whom we share the world. These pictures show some of the sheet mulching that I've been doing to shrink our lawn and to create garden beds for native trees, shrubs, and perennials. So I just want to show you these pictures because here's their, I think it's a before picture. There's their sheet mulching. There's the birds that they're trying to encourage. And last of all, this looks like columbine in front. It gets confusing. It's a columbine in front of Lanacera. I'm blanking.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's a honeysuckle.
Honeysuckle. That's the word I'm trying to think of. So then we have people who are serious, who how should I put it? They really want to show off their garden, and so these are the red flowers. Hold on. And these people, to have a red flower designation means you're a demonstration garden. And the first, so we designed this to try to have this map be multifunctional. I talked about an armchair tour where you could click through and look at photographs of various people's gardens. And then you can do a DIY garden tour. You can go to these red flowers. They all have addresses listed. And they fill the 3 criteria. First of all, they want to put their address on the map. Second of all, they have 70% native plants in their garden. Third of all, you have to be able to see it from the sidewalk. So people can go visit your garden anytime without disturbing you, without entering your property. So finally, I'm going to show you what we did. I think a lot of you were at Evan Abramson's talk last night. Whoops. So I put on these links. These links, I'll start from the smallest one. This is based on Evan Abrahamson's work, where he has documented that 300 feet is the typical distance a small bee, like a sweat bee, will fly between gardens. And so this is the red line. That means all bees can fly this distance, right? So between these two properties, all bees can travel this distance. Then the purple line is a designation for any distance under 1,500 feet, which is the typical distance and the average distance a medium-sized bee, like I think it's a mason bee, will fly. So all of these purple areas mean all kinds of bees, except for the small minor bees. Sweat bees can fly. And then the blue line is the longest distance, 1,800 feet. That's about a third of a mile. And that's the largest bees can fly, bumblebees. So only bumblebees, for example, can travel between these properties. Will be able to travel between these properties. So this is Belmont, and you can see the beginnings, really the beginnings of a actual pathway or corridor. And our goal is to, of course, turn this whole thing into red lines, right? Red areas where all bees can travel between sites. So okay. So the next one, okay, I have to change the slide here. Hold on. There we go. So we recently, like last week, just added our brand new sign as part of the MAP project. We got 50 orders because we had a one-time order. And this sign is actually the sign from the pollinator pathway that originated out of Connecticut. And this is their map. It originated out of Connecticut. And when I first checked in, looked at their map last year, it was really, Connecticut up into, hardly into Massachusetts even, more into eastern New York, a little bit further down into New Jersey, but they have really grown. Look at this. I did not include Alaska, which also has somebody with a on their map, but so the sign, we felt like it identifies us as a part of a larger, of a national pathway. But of course we have a sticker to that adds our own local stamp. So Jean, are you ready to
Sure. Yeah. Bring it home. Nice. The signs arrived today, so they'll be distributed. Very excited. I want to go back and then go forward, but I'll be fast. The timing for organizing was perfect, not only because it was COVID and people were homebound and thinking of gardens, but also multiple people in multiple communities were thinking beyond one garden and thinking, how can we engage our communities to embrace pollinator gardens? I was co-founder of of Meadowscaping for Biodiversity, which educates youth how to create native plant gardens to do something positive for the future by restoring biodiversity and mitigating climate change. And when Barbara and I were giving this talk back in June at Sustainable Belmont, we were saying how our students got it, but not always the customers. They couldn't get customers, or adults didn't get it. And how could we get each town where our students were to embrace the idea of more native plant gardens and even make policy around it? So when we started our Zoom meetings, it was fabulous one of the benefits was bringing people from different towns together who could share some of their tricks and trades, their individual garden trades, but also what their towns were doing. So that was a valuable way to identify best practices and know, wow, like Sarah and I are from Belmont, and we've had Arlington and Lexington envy for a long time because those communities are a little further along with their environmental issues. But anyway, so bringing us together, the timing was great. And we made tons of friends that I just met Charlie in person for the first time, 2 weeks ago. So we got to know each other all on this little screen. So anyway, that was a very important part. And I'll get into the getting guest speakers helped us learn about best practice. But anyway, so we formed a steering committee, and that's the four of us here, Sarah, Brucey, Kim, and myself. And we really try to, think ahead what topics would be interesting, who we should get, what kind of action we could do to keep the main thrust of this going, which is to promote more native plant gardens in each of our communities and along this pathway. Sarah developed this whole map, which is just astounding. And at first, the map was just baseline. What is out there already? How many gardens exist there already? But the survey, which you didn't really say, is an educational tool because we put enough information into that survey that by just filling it out, you learn what's a keystone plant or what's a native plant in the spring, or why redbud counts for 2 or an oak counts for a bazillion. So that was a valuable way to get use of parsing out information. And now with the signs, that was educational too, because people had to get their garden onto the map in order to order a sign. So I guess that's enough for this page. Can you go to the next? Meeting monthly has worked. We did tips and tricks, but we mostly try to share information across town. So we brought in speakers. For example, in Somerville, Tori Antonino and Renee Scott talked about the native plant ordinance, and it took them 6 years to get it. They offered some real great advice that might shorten it for the rest of our communities. So that was a valuable time. Peggy McLeod and the whole gang from NOFA talked about the formation of the Pollinator Network, and then what was in store for the Massachusetts MAPN. We had, well, you can see these talks, but all of them provided just elevated the conversation beyond just our gardens and how we could sort of mobilize our towns to do things and think bigger. So I think that's been a really valuable method in our meetings. Next. Okay, so these are our accomplishments, I guess, and that map really helped put us on. We used that map this spring. Sarah, Brucey, and I did multiple presentations about keystone native plants and how they're useful for making all types of gardens. I mean, when we went to Cambridge, we were talking about small gardens because that was one urban area. When we went to Watertown as guests of Friends of Bees, we were talking more about what you could be doing in a bigger backyard. So we sort of adjusted it, but the common theme was focusing on, and this was Evan last night, focusing on the keystone species that will address at-risk populations. And by doing that, you'll also attract the other pollinators. So we did that. So garden pictures, that was our anniversary. We've set up our speakers, and we're really now wondering, there are a plethora of groups out there talking, and the MAPN is up and running. So this is where we are now, but now we're questioning, well, what do we do going forward? So that's really, I guess you can hit the next slide, but I don't really have much on that. Do we meet every month, or maybe every other month? These are questions that we have for our members. The Facebook members is a big group from everywhere. And then the attending members tends to range from 10, 15 people to 40 people, depending on the talk and conflicts at night. So do we have a kind of meeting every other month? How do we continue to promote? There's value in this group assembly, I believe. We're more, we combine urban. I do a lot of teaching and garden building in Cambridge, very small gardens, and larger areas like Lexington, where there's a big space for eco restoration projects. So we run the gamut of different types of pollinator gardens and different types of interests. So we're just trying to figure out how we address that as a group going forward. I think that's it for us. We'll take questions maybe.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. It's a great story, and again, a model that I hope is replicated across the state. If folks have questions, we do have time for you to ask. There was already one, I think it was Heidi, and I actually had a similar question. How you went about distributing the survey? Was it like after you had enough, like sort of like a critical mass on Facebook, and then you distribute it through social media? How did you?
It's actually on our Facebook, and I've dropped the link in the chat.
But I think when we first had to name our organization, and that took a few months, so we didn't distribute the survey until late December, I think. But we got publicity in the Belmont Citizens Forum, which is a publication that focuses on environmental issues. And I think that sort of lifted us. And a lot of us did these email blasts to different communities saying, we've got this thing going on, like several of us, I know I did a lot, to Mount Auburn Cemetery, to Rock Meadow, to Fresh Pond, because they hadn't really heard of it. But we also were on the listserv of the Belmont Garden Club, the Arlington Garden Club, I don't know, Medford and Lexington. I think just the same way that our members came together at the beginning, we filtered out that information through emails.
Excellent. And then Maria asked, are you continuing to add gardens to your map? And is there a review process to see how a garden is listed on your map?
There's no review process, completely on the honor code. And we are adding gardens all the time. It's, some months are faster than others. but I think we started in November maybe, but so it's, 110.
Oh.
110 gardens?
Sites, yeah.
Sites.
Entries, people who have filled out surveys.
And the survey really explains the criteria. It takes you through this process of what you have in your garden, and says, do you have this, do you have that? And it explains what you need in order to get on the map. It really leads you through the process, and it explains that if you meet our basic criteria, you can be on the map. And then do you want to be identified by your address, or just more generally, do you want to be you want to post photographs. So there are these different levels that Sarah described.
Do you want me to show you the survey? I don't know.
Yes, why don't you pull up the start of it? I think that would be great. We were
a form. We call it a survey, but really it's like a form.
Well, this is the green space survey. Here's the residential survey. So email, name, street address. You as I showed you on the map, you have to include your street address in order for us to accurately map the distances of the bee flights, right? So some people really do not want to give an address at all, and then that's a problem. Can't be on the map. So native planting native species, we provide the web links for the list that we based our list off of. First is the tree, and we tried to list. It's very hard to limit, you know, I think we cut down to 10 to 12 for each section of this plant list, what we thought were the most common people most likely to have. But so then early bloom, and we have these double asterisks saying, so please be careful with this. Do you have a geranium or do you have a geranium maculatum, right? Columbine, do you have the actual Canadian columbine, or do you have a frilly garden cultivar? Viburnums, you know, these are tricky. Roses, and of course honeysuckle. Then there's the late bloom. Then do you have 6 native species listed? Oh wait, what happened to our? This is a important question, our pesticide question, which has evolved as we've learned more in our group. Because we really want to say no pesticides, and in fact the sign says no pesticides, no chemical pesticides, but people but it's a lot of people. we said, you know, if you try to avoid it, we will take you, but we don't want to. We waffled back and forth between, do you use pesticides or do you not use pesticides? And are you not allowed to be on this map if you do use pesticides?
Why are you excluding herbicides?
Pesticides, for us, pesticides includes, to avoid except for herbicides.
Yeah. I don't understand what that's about, that second one.
That's kind of a tricky issue. It could be simple and black and white, no pesticides ever for any purpose. In large landscapes, not the typical homeowner's yard, but for example, in larger public landscapes or farmlands, if there is intensive invasive pressure, it's almost impossible financially and in terms of available labor to do a complete effective removal job. And so there has been a lot of discussion about it. And I would not say that we want to encourage anybody to use an herbicide. And we know that, for example, glyphosate, it not only is injurious to insects, but birds that eat glyphosate poisoned insects are less able to put on weight that they need for migration. Nonetheless, we do have examples of major players in the field who who are using very selective application of herbicides to recover severely overrun landscapes.
But this is a home survey, so you're actually including,
well, yes, so your
homes
exactly the point
that use herbicides that.
Well, I think what we're trying to do is, because there are a lot of, in the case of invasives, where it's hard to control beyond pulling. I agree that on a residential level, you should not really have this issue. But like I said, it's been very controversial, and we've tried to, we've had various iterations of this question. Let's just put it this way.
Speaking as someone who has a large residential lot and a lot of invasives, it would be absolutely beyond my financial or physical capability to control the invasives unless I used herbicides, which I do very responsibly and minimally, but
I
it's
understand.
it's
I'm
impossible
just
not to.
curious that this is supposed to be an educational tool also, and I just wonder if it's misunderstood by Heidi. I can understand, and I accept that there's a role for herbicides, but I just wonder if it's
Maria,
misunderstood.
you have given us food for thought.
It's always important to keep
the time, but you've given us food for thought.
Yeah, important to keep.
We debated this for like days, but we are bringing in
Weeks and months.
Yeah. No, I'm and we don't all agree. I mean, it's just really hard because there's different circumstances, but I it's good to revisit this because, yeah, it's pretty awful system. Someone asked to see what our towns are in the map, and the very last slide, Sarah, there's that slide I did that has the pink circle around the yellow area.
Okay.
Maybe you could show that. People from outside can add their maps, but we've mostly been focusing on from Lexington to the sea, Woburn to Brookline, sort of the lower basins of the two rivers, Mystic and Charles.
This is so impressive. I am like just so impressed. This is amazing.
Thank you. Oh, and one thing, who was talking about the Great Barrington Pollinator Plan? I mean, we love that, and the gear list, and we've asked, should we, one of the resources, should we provide like templates for gardens and a plan? And that it's really something to marvel at. The scope of that is really big. So I'm glad someone is here from that organization, because that's really impressive. Sarah, did you want to just show the map?
Oh, you can't see it?
No.
Did I stop screen sharing?
You did.
Oh.
Yes, we had Jane Wynn on the call earlier, who is with the Berkshire Environmental Action Team. I think she had to drop off at 8 o'clock, but I think
yes.
we've been talking about the Great Barrington Plan.
Okay, you can see it now?
Yes.
So the yellow is really the whole basin of both rivers. But for the most part, at least when we started and had members coming in every month, most of them hailed from that area within the pink circle. So, we took the name Mystic Charles, but that goes all the way out to Mendon. So that's where we've sort of started.
This Yeah, it's a very large area.
Yeah,
You said
yeah.
there was that one all the way down in, did you say it was Medfield or Medfield?
Yeah.
All alone, some lonely gardener out there.
You know, it's kind of like the Connecticut Pathways Group. When they found out that that people in other states wanted to get on the map, they were astounded. And when we said we wanted to include Mystic Charles Pollinator Pathway Group gardens, they said, we never thought it would get to, you know, it would have such an impact. And so they're all very, and so it's the same thing with Mystic Charles, you know, the little boundary creek.
Can you tell me why you decided to make it along the rivers?
Yeah, certainly. So part of the reason is that both the Mystic River and the Charles River have very long established, extremely effective watershed associations. And the Mystic River, I know the Mystic River Watershed Association best. It's based here in Arlington, but it covers, I think it's all 22 communities in the watershed. And they do a lot with native plants and incorporating native plants into stormwater management installations and native plant gardens. And they've collaborated with the town of Arlington and other communities in our area to support installation of rain gardens, native plant gardens, etc. So it following the, so that's a long way of saying that because these strong organizations already identifying the watersheds, and a lot of other things are going on related to the environment that are based on the watershed. This was why we went that way.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, it is, we're having such a good discussion, but it's 8:08. I want to make sure I respect everyone's time. Thank you so much for presenting. It's amazing how that all came together. I know maybe for you, it felt like it took a long time, but to me, that seems like such a short time over which you did such amazing and expansive work. And I'm really excited to see how many more gardens pop up on the map and how that boundary creep works out. So thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I do we're going to have our next meeting at the end of October. I believe it's the 27th. And we mentioned the native plant ordinance in Somerville, and it's Green and Open Somerville is the organization that worked on that. And they are going to be coming to talk to us at our next meeting about that ordinance and how it got passed, which is exciting. I'm really looking forward to that. So I hope to see you all there, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.